What is going on, everybody? Happy another NFL weekend. We have week 15 coming up here. Just basically, we sort of talked about it last week that it was sort of like the last real week. It's getting to be more and more that type of thing in the NFL, but we still, I think everybody's pretty much a go. Sheets we got in the playoffs in the 2+2, so we got to get him some good advice here and some good ideas.
No.
And it's time to win the big one. We have to do it before the year's out, and we're basically running out of time here. So let's win the big one this week. Sheets, I know it's a huge slate, not as huge as last week, but sort of first thoughts, anybody you feel like is a must-have, any thoughts, a game that can't get away from, anything like that?
Yeah, so just so you guys know, I mean, I did what I always do. I did a video just really for my own benefit on Tuesday morning without seeing any projections or anything like that, because I really want to win this 2+2 thing. Okay, now keep something in mind, like, the lineup I need to win the 2+2 thing over the next 3 weeks is totally not the same as the lineups needed to win the big one, as Bobby was saying. Now, just to remind you guys, I'm down to we would start off with however many people started with. We're down to 4 people that now compete next 3 weeks over. So whatever happens next 3 weeks, they all combine. And I'm up against 3 very, very tough players. One guy I'm up against, one of the top fantasy players I think in the world, is TJ guy, TJ Johnson or whatever. He's awesome. This guy Ray, whatever I forget his last name, but Ray or something. Exit only used to be on poker in 2+2. Ray of Hope. He's really good. And the third guy is this total animal Stampede who just always seems to kill it. The only thing I've going for me is that I guarantee you I care about this thing more than all of them. Okay, they're probably playing multiple 5 figures or not more in this, and they're just, oh shit, my 2+2 thing, I better make sure I put a lineup in that, where I'm like really focused on this. That's my advantage. So I'm going to be trying to build like kind of single entry-ish type lineups for this, not like cash lineups, because I do need to have some upside because it's over 3 weeks. But I don't need to go completely ballistic because I only need to be three people. So, I mean, we'll go game by game, but if you want to know the truth, my first lock, if you want to wait till we get to it, but the first guy I put in my lineups, and I guarantee you're 100% on this, as will 80% of the universe, is Brandon Ayuk. Okay, like when he was going to be a good play anyway, and then when Deebo Samuel was ruled out, I'm like, okay, so if it wasn't bad enough that he was already like probably the top receiver, who basically Bobby told everybody about like a month and a half ago, now he's also going to be getting all that Deebo Samuel jet sweep trick play work. So he's the closest thing to a lock I have, as will everybody else. But no, not to mention it's against Dallas. No shot he is not in my lineup. That I guarantee you. And then the other things we'll get to as we get to them. But I had some pretty, I guess, easy-ish takes that we'll get to when we get to them, I guess.
Yeah, I think I certainly agree with that first one.
Right.
I was a little frustrated even because, me, we've been getting Ayuk at almost no ownership, and now he's
Right.
going to be, this is not going to be the same situation exactly.
Right.
Anyway, all right. Well, let's get into it game by game. Why don't we call up your screen and start talking about it? I think there's going to be a lot of concentrated chalk this week, and I like most of it, but we're going to have to try and find ways to get off of some of it.
Well, let's just get right into it, man. So yesterday, Ronald Jones, who I originally was going to have in my main lineup at 6K, was ruled out, and now it's the fat man season, right? Now it's Leonard Fournette at 4,500 against Atlanta. Now, again, he doesn't really catch balls, but I've seen it happen. I guess that's my first comment about this game. The other thing is I didn't really like the Atlanta receivers too much. So from the Tampa Bay side of things, we're gonna have to talk about Fournette. I'd rather not play him, but I hope I don't have to. Now, with respect to Atlanta, we have Ridley limited. We have Julio not in 30. You just have to wait and see kind of what happens with that. Once again, I think if either of these guys are out, for example, I think Gage becomes a really good play, And obviously, if Julio is out, Ridley, I still think is a good play also. But one concept, by the way, that you've been emphasizing every week, and I think even more so, you talked about Matt Ryan in this respect, is you're really going to have to start embracing the fact that some of these quarterbacks you can't play, but you could certainly play the receivers, and Matt Ryan's a perfect example of it. Every week is receiver smash, and he ends up with like 15 fantasy points, like at most. And last week you had Russell Gates throwing it to Ridley, which was extra tilting if you had the Ryan on top. So that's my initial take. The other thing I would say about this game, and we'll get to them, I guess we go position by position when we recap it, is Atlanta was actually coming off as one of my better defenses, value-wise. And that's pretty much my take on this game.
Yeah. Wait, you say Atlanta was coming up as one of your better defenses?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I know they're cheap. They didn't jump out at me, but I kind of see, I guess if you get a little pressure on Brady, and they've actually been playing better lately. I actually thought you were going to say the other defense, but I like the Bucs defense in this game. Okay, so starting with Fournette.
Yeah.
The issue I'm having is I'm seeing projections of him like 25 to 35%, and I'm actually wondering why it's not like 50 or 60%. So I guess if I really think he's going to be in that range, I would like to be over the field on him. However, we have plenty of options. So as of right now, I have Fournette as a guy who I have, as like obviously would be a cash. I mean, honestly, in your 2+2, I don't see a whole lot of reason not to play him. But maybe as we go on, we'll find some other options. But I just really.
Well, the reason why you might not want to play him is there's a lot of good running backs.
There are.
There's not like incredibly important, expensive wide receivers I need. That's the issue here for me, I think, this week.
The other thing is that maybe LaShawn McCoy gets a tiny bit of the work. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I really have to reach before I start thinking why Fournette's not a reasonable play. One other way you could play this game, though, is, I don't mind Brady this week with the passing game a little bit with one or two of the receivers. You're going to hear this from me all the time, obviously. You know how I work. But I still believe I'm going to take Antonio Brown above the other two. You're getting the price discount, the ownership discount. And realistically, none of them really did anything last week, except for with Evans. I think Evans might have gotten in the end zone. No, he didn't. None of them really did anything last week against Minnesota, which is a pretty easy team to throw on. It's weird because they all feel too cheap, but they're not going to have a ton of ownership. And what I would say is I just want to be ahead of the field on all of these receivers, but especially Brown. And then I have Evans and Godwin rated pretty closely. I think Godwin has a better day more often, but they definitely look for Evans more in the red zone. So there's multi-touchdown upside. So that's just sort of the way I'm treating their team overall. I'm not interested in the tight ends. I just like the passing game outside of tight ends. And Gronk is okay, but I'm not going to play him. No reason. But that's one way you can maybe get away a little bit from the Fournette chalk. But you could also play Fournette with those guys, with one of those guys without Brady too. And on the other side, we really need to wait and see, like you said. I don't think either way I'm going to have a ton of interest in Calvin Ridley at 8.2. But Julio, I certainly would have interested in at 6.9. And I might have, I still have a tiny bit of interest in Russell Gage. If Julio was out again, I don't think I would go back to one of these minimum cost guys again. I tried a little bit of Christian Blake last week and, didn't work out very well for me. Obviously didn't have any targets even. So mostly for me in this game, it is, excuse me. It's going to be Antonio Brown and Fournette as my highest owned players. I will have some Brady, maybe like 5. I have him as 5 to 10%, not like a huge amount right now, but he's a guy who's certainly on my list right now. And with Atlanta on the run backs, it's hard to know without knowing what Julio's status is, but I'm just going to say if Julio does play, I start to like, maybe playing Fournette and Brown on one side with Julio on the other. I think that makes a lot of sense actually. Or maybe even Godwin and Fournette. So I do like this game. I just mostly want to focus on the Fournette with one of the receivers from Tampa side of it.
You know what was great with Tampa? When they have, like last week, they were in a high total situation, whatever, and they have Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Rob Gronkowski, and down the middle for 50-yard touchdown with Scotty Miller.
I know. I had so much exposure too, and I got excited just seeing the ball in the air. I didn't realize it was Scotty Miller.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, so Fournette's going to be, as of right now, I would call him he is like, if you want to find reasons to fade him also, he's coming off an injury. Well, he's been inactive, I should say. But I do think it's a tough fade, and there are good running backs as you mentioned, but that value is pretty strong. You ready to move on to the next one?
Yeah. We could alternate. You can do this game.
Yeah. So okay. So basically, to start off with, like, just I don't think we should be playing J.D. McKissic at 5,700 on this slate. We saw him get actually more of the carry load that I thought he would last week, but Peyton Barber still had 12 carries and 3 targets. I just think I'm going to stay away from both of these guys, to be honest with you. And I think they're not going to have much ownership, but it'll be a little bit. I really like Washington's defense in general, but I wouldn't mind taking a shot on Chris Carson. They're starting to involve him more and more. But honestly, like, this game doesn't really stand out to me for fantasy purposes. I'm always going to take my shots with Metcalf because of his upside, and there's no Devontae on this slate. So I think taking a shot just on Metcalf, just hoping for, hey, break the slate. You know what I mean? Same, somewhat true with Lockett, although less true, even though the price is so cheap. I think that McLaurin is really the one guy who I might, have more than the field in this game, other than Metcalf, maybe.
Okay, so as forgot who it was that I can't tell you what to do. I can only tell you what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to have some of this. So I think Haskins is going to be starting. Yep. And I'm going to have some of that. I'm going to have some Haskins. I'm going to have him with McLaurin. I'm going to have him with Logan Thomas. I think the combination of Seattle's, not the greatest against the pass, to say the least, plus the fact that Seattle's going to be ahead. And Haskins hasn't played in a while, so I still think he needs to show out. I think that literally all the targets are going to go to these two guys, and playing Haskins at quarterback at 5K opens up like a lot of other stuff. And I'm going to play a little of this. I'm not going to make it a huge part of what I'm doing, but I was going through this when I did my Tuesday video for myself. I mean, I like McLaurin as a play in general, and I like Thomas as a play in general. And I'm gonna have a little of this. I'm not gonna play McKissic, and wouldn't that be just dandy and proper if the week after he busts everybody as chalk, he comes back and just smashes with Haskins throwing it to him when it was Alex Smith was supposed to be checking down 10 targets to him last week, but that's just gonna have to beat me, I suppose. There's too many other running backs I like. So I am gonna do a little of that, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think I get it with McKissic. Maybe I shouldn't say that I won't have any exposure, because if Seattle does sort of pull away in this game, I could see it. Or gets a big lead, he could catch a ton of balls out of the backfield. So mildly interesting. Is there any? I don't know for sure that Haskins is going to start this game, but if he was, is there any? I'm trying to think if there's any receivers I would give it uptick to. I don't really think so. Haskins has looked horrible to me, so I get playing him. I just don't think I'm going to end up doing that myself much.
I got you.
Maybe I'll change my mind as the week goes on, but I do think getting ahead of just having a little bit of Metcalf and maybe be ahead of the field on, I don't know, I'll probably be right near the field on McLaurin too, to be honest with you. Seattle's defense has been a tiny bit better lately, but.
And obviously the other problem here is that with Haskins, I mean, when you see that the raw points that some of these quarterbacks are going to be putting up, I mean, like, you have like the cream of the crop of these freaking running quarterbacks on the slate, pretty much, plus Mahomes. So it's you're gonna have to get there some other way. So again, don't try this at home, and I'm not going to make it a huge part, but just disclosure, I'm going to play a little.
Right. All right, do you want to move on to the next one? You want to start this one off?
Yeah. So decision number one in my 2+2 and in my and in a lot of people's builds is whether to pay up for running back. And the two guys that are available to pay up for running back are Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry. And they're both going to be owned. And at the beginning of the week, I thought that despite the 9,500 owner price tag, I thought Henry was going to be really like much chalkier than Cook. And yet it seems as though they're getting closer, right? Mm-hmm. So this is definitely a decision I'm going to have to make, is whether I pay up for Henry or Cook. And if so, which one? So look, Cook's he's always a good play, honestly. Again, the matchup for Cook is not as good as the matchup for Henry by a long shot. But Cook certainly is a good play. Then the other thing is on the other side of the equation, you could make a case to go right back again. I mean, like David Montgomery scores 20 fantasy points a game, apparently. So he's certainly in play, as is, I mean, this entire Chicago offense, right? I mean, Minnesota hasn't stopped anybody either, I think, since, for a while. And the Bears have been putting up some points, man. And you can go right back to your man. I go right back to Daryl Mooney or Allen Robinson. This game could be not your grandfather's Vikings Bears game. Like this could really get there. But just in terms of disclosure, whatever, the one guy of all of it that stands out as the best value in this game for whatever reason is the tight end for the Bears, is Cole Kmet at 3K. So if you are going to play Trubisky and that kind of thing, I would play Kmet with one of the receivers maybe. I think there's a lot of fantasy points available in this game.
Yeah, I'm with you a little bit on this game. I like also that it's in Minnesota. I think you have two teams that are pretty close. I'm not interested in Montgomery at all. Okay. I'm considering, I don't usually X players out of my pool, especially when I'm the script 150, which I will this weekend because it's a $10.
Let's go.
I don't see any reason to play this guy at any sort of ownership. I mean, you want to talk about coming off the three best matchups in all of football for running backs.
Yep.
And
that's why we played him.
Yeah, exactly. But also in those games, he's broken a huge play in two of them, and then had two touchdowns, got the touchdown equity on his side, and the other one against Detroit. Without those two huge plays, he had 11 carries in a game where they were dominating and should have been grounding the game out. That would make it a huge concern now that he's up to 7K. If I have any of them, it's only going to be a part of a game stack, and it'll be very, very, very minimal. I am interested in the passing game. I have Mitchell Trubisky as one of my quarterbacks this week. The guy I don't think anything of him as a real life quarterback, but when he starts throwing the ball at all and, factor in a minuscule amount of rushing upside that he used to seem to show a little bit more of than he has lately. I just sort of like him with some of these receivers. So he's on my list, not more than probably 10%, but I really like, I love Allen Robinson, and I love Robinson, Jefferson, and Thielen. I think their ownership is going to be lower this week than usual. In Jefferson and Thielen's case because of the matchup, but in Robinson's case because maybe sticker shock a little bit, but he's been really, really good, and I'm interested in pieces of him. As far as Mooney goes, I currently have him in like a 10 to 20%, in my script, and I have Anthony Miller. I think the thing that's happened though is that I think Anthony Miller is basically as good of a play as, well, just slightly below Mooney. I think Mooney's got more upside, but I'm sort of considering all these guys. So like you, I try to attack Minnesota as much as I can. So if I'm going to play, instead of playing Kmet, if I'm going to play Trubisky, I might play him with Robinson and Mooney, or Robinson and Miller, or potentially just Mooney. So that's sort of what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
I do think Jefferson, I don't want to say matchup proof yet or anything. I know he didn't have a big game last week, but I really think that the more you watch this Vikings team play, it's like the idea of not playing this guy scares me every time, because I feel like it feels like they're always trying to hit him for 30 yards downfield, and almost everything either hits or doesn't, or almost hits. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he and Thielen are both. I'll be ahead of the field. This is the game I'll be ahead of the field on, unlike the last one, which I'll be completely below the field on.
Okay.
Want me to start this one?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so we got Indy and Houston. You got Indy as a pretty big favorite here, and sort of what we talked about all year, and how everybody's, it's funny, Sheets, how narratives and things change. 3 weeks ago, the idea of playing T.Y. Hilton would get you laughed at on shows, and now all of a sudden, T.Y. Hilton is becoming like a really strong play. Couple it with the fact that he's as good against Houston as any receiver, basically against any team. He absolutely lights up this team every time, including 2 weeks ago. He had 8 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown, still only 5,500. He stands out as being my first interest in this game. I don't mind if you want to get creative and kind of stack it. I was a little, I don't like going against this I think the Indy, let's put it this way. I think Indy's D is solid, but they somehow get themselves into shootout-y type of games. And Desean Watson is always, like, other than last week against the Bears, where I really was disappointed in him, he pretty much always, like, will make some sort of a run. And I just want to point out, he's going to be unowned. And last time he played this team, I mean, he did throw the ball for 340. He threw for 341 yards. Now, he didn't have any passing touchdowns, which I just think is somewhat variance. But I have a little bit of interest in Desean Watson and Brandon Cooks and QT, maybe just one of those two, and then running it back with T.Y. Hilton on the other side. I also like Jonathan Taylor's going to be massively owned, and I've been on him. I'm going to be a little bit below the field on him this week and maybe try to get a tiny bit of ownership on Nyheim Hines, partially due to the pricing and ownership. I just don't think Taylor is as much of a lock here. He's too game flow dependent for me to call him a lock here, even though it should be the game script that he's good in. I don't know if I need to play him at 22% at 7,200 or somewhere around that range. I think I'll take like the 3% Nyheim Hines and hope that maybe Houston gets out to the lead with, what's his name, Watson to one of QT or Cooks. But really the main priority, the only guy I've got like above 20% in this game interest in is T.Y. Hilton right now.
Do you have any interest, before I go into my round of this game, do you have any interest in David Johnson?
I thought about him, but no.
Okay. So here's my view on this. So I felt as though, there were several ways you can go, but at least at the beginning of the week that you had a choice. Well, I had a choice, whatever, of either going up to Derrick Henry or playing guys like two guys like Jonathan Taylor and say Cam Akers, who we'll get to a little bit later, like two guys around the 7K range, running back. And I just kind of went back and forth, look, it's certainly, they're an 8-point favorite against maybe the worst rushing defense in the league, actually. So he certainly is in a really, really good spot. He's been, there was like kind of like a 4-week period in there where you didn't even know if he was going to be the lead back anymore, right? But that eventually just kind of worked itself out. And I think that as they make a run towards the playoffs, it's just like there's no other choice. I mean, he's the best running back on the team, and he's a second-year guy or rookie, whatever, and they're gonna roll with him. So I definitely think that he's a really, really strong play. Houston side, I wasn't going to play any David Johnson at all. I'm going to be including Cooks in my player pool for sure. But this is what I think about Indianapolis. So first of all, T.Y. Hilton, it's been suggested, that the reason why he's been doing better, and this makes a lot of sense, is for like a good part of the year, they were expecting T.Y. to like be like T.Y. and just have a lot of speed and get open, but obviously that's not him anymore. And they finally, over the last couple of weeks, actually figured out a way to scheme him into some better looks. They have him breaking it out into the middle of the field, and when he has, he's still very, very, very sneaky. So after he breaks it out to the middle of the field, people bite on that. Then he can get deep without having to, necessarily outrun everybody, because he'll get a jump on everybody. So I think they figured out a way to kind of get him going. And I know I'm not, narratives, whatever, but I mean, how many times have we seen this right against Houston in the dome and all that? But I think that if you're going to win this is just my opinion. I think if you're going to win the Millie Maker, for example, I think just the ultra leverage play is just to take Pittman, right? In this game, as people are going to be playing Taylor, people are going to be jumping on T.Y. I think that Pittman is the ultimate leverage play here. And so I'm definitely going to play some of that. Yeah,
I think it's a great call for a big thing. I think that people have to remember, like, it's a little bit like we used to joke about how Pittsburgh was like this a few years ago. And it's basically like playing Coors Field sometimes when you play Houston. You just the fantasy gold mine,
Yeah.
We saw it last week with the Bears. We've seen it a number of times this season. We saw it with Indianapolis a couple of weeks ago. Saw it with was it Detroit who got them before? I think it was.
On Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think it's interesting that Brandon Cooks in this exact same matchup in the exact same situation 2 weeks ago was 35% owned, is going to be unowned. Now he didn't pay off that thing, but it's just probably worth looking at,
keep something in mind, Indianapolis' defense has not been good.
The thing is, and the truth is, when they were good, they were really good against really poor teams. So, I mean, I think they're a good football team. I think they have the best offensive line, or one of the best two offensive lines in football. But I'm into the Hilton and Cooks thing mostly. But I like the idea of Pittman as a pivot, or even Pascal in large field GPPs. I think you just want to get. This is the kind of game where even if you didn't love everything, you kind of want to get little pieces of exposure, like Nyheim Hines in a long shot tournament. Just the way these games that both Indy and Houston have played at times, the games have gotten sort of wonky and out of hand, and that's what you're looking for to try and take down a massive GPP in a large field. So this is a game you're going to want to get some pieces on for sure if you're multi-entry.
Yep.
All right, ready to move on?
Yep. So, right. So, not only is Derrick Henry just killing people, but he's going against one of the worst rushing defenses in football, as an 11-point favorite. And if that's not enough, even though their number one goal is making the playoffs and getting a run, they're gonna try to stuff 2,000 yards into the stat book. You just know they're gonna just keep feeding him, if they could possibly do it. So, it's 9,500. So, on the one hand, it's 9,500. On the other hand, it's only 9,500. I mean, what's going to happen? It's kind of hard to not play him. So, as I mentioned, it's a decision everybody's going to have to make, whether you pay up and whether you pay for Henry or Cook. Now, I honestly I cannot believe in the real world that Cook is going to be even remotely as highly owned as Henry. You know what I mean?
I think at best it's 3-1. Henry's on 3-1.
Oh, okay. Because I've seen like both of them at 20% or 25%. Can't be, right?
Those feel like early projections to me. I can't.
Right. If you're going to pay for Cooks, you may as well get the 200 rushing yard upside, right?
Yeah, I mean, if Tennessee had nothing to play for, then maybe you could argue. But I don't know what we're talking about.
So look, if you can afford them, play them. I'm going to tell you, for me, I'm probably going to be, and I'll give you one other take in a minute. I'm probably going to be under on him, as I almost always am, when he's popular. I mean, I've tried to play him when he's unpopular. I'll probably be off him. I mean, because here's one thing. If he gets 200 let's say he gets 200 rushing yards and a touchdown. I mean, that's only 26 points, right? I mean, he's 9,500. So he's going to also have to get a couple of catches to really just make you like upset that you didn't have him. So it's not the worst thing in the world to fade it. The other thing I will say, shout out to, and we talk about this in another project we're in. So there's a really, really just well-known projection system that has is known for just fading Henry every week. I mean, like every single week, fade Henry, fade Henry, fade Henry. Henry's overpriced. You can't play him. This week, they're on it. Okay. So for me, I'm like, okay, probably a lot then. You know what I mean? If he never ever likes him, finally they're on him. And again, the conspiracy theory, the real justifiable thing that'll happen is when the projections finally gets on him, that's when he gets injured in the first quarter or something like that. So yes, he's a good play. Now, a very natural, I don't even want to say pivot, because I think he's going to be highly owned too off of that. Maybe he's not going to be highly owned, is to play Corey Davis from Tennessee, to leverage off of the Henry ownership, I suppose. That's something you could do. And that's pretty much all I'm doing on the Tennessee side. I'm going to play probably some Henry. It's not going to be as much as a lot of people. I really don't think I'm going to. And on the Detroit side, I still don't even know for sure who's going to be the quarterback. If in fact you can get Stafford, I do really like Marvin Jones in this spot. I was really heavy on him last week, despite the atrocious matchups he had with that Green Bay cornerback. I kind of said, I don't care about matchups. I'm just going to play him. And, I don't know whether it's because of the matchup, whatever it is, but he really just didn't come up well. This is certainly a better matchup for him, cornerback wise. Galladay is not going to play. They rate to be coming from behind. I think that if I can get I actually almost don't even care whether it's Stafford or Driscoll, if you want to know the truth. I think that Jones, especially off the dud.
Would it be Stafford or Chase Daniel?
What's that? I'm sorry, I meant Chase Daniel. Sorry. I think he's going to be a strong play. and I'm probably going to try him. I did not, at the very beginning of the week, I actually was considering also the running back, Deandre Swift.
Yeah.
And I was going to wait to talk to you about that. So that's where I'm at in this game.
Yeah, I'm okay with the idea of Swift. Didn't get a ton of carries last week. Some of it was game flow, but that game flow could easily pay off. It's hard for me to like the Lions without if Stafford's not going to be the quarterback. It's hard to have too much interest. But I agree with you that Marvin Jones would be the guy I would have some interest in. But the guy who actually, even without whether he plays or not, I think I actually would probably prefer Hawkinson to all of them. Okay. He's been really consistent, and I know he's 5.2 and it's sort of a weird high price to pay for a tight end, but I just think he's going to get low ownership here. I actually like both the tight ends in this game, both Hawkinson and Jonnu. As of right now, I'm sort of taking the easy route out and saying I'll be sort of near the field on Henry. I really like him. I think there's a chance that you absolutely need him to win anything. But I mean, look, we have Cook a little cheaper. We can play with different constructions, other ways. It's just there's always that 200 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns where you kind of feel like, why wouldn't I just play the guy who's obvious if I can find some other stuff? And by the way, you can play him and Corey Davis. Like, it seems like he goes off, and at the same games that one of these receivers goes off as well. I prefer Corey Davis because the savings a little bit, but AJ Brown is completely in play as well. I just don't know how much of them I'm really going to get to. Mostly it's going to be the tight ends and Henry for me from this one.
Okay.
All right, let's move on. This is going to be an interesting one. Jacksonville, Baltimore. You have Baltimore as a massive favorite without, what do we have now? 5 guys with COVID. Wait, why are they still have projections on these guys?
Who's out?
I got a message saying that Marquise Brown, basically receiving
coach tested that hasn't tested positive, but he's a close contact.
Oh, okay. I thought that they were out. I mean, that was yesterday's thing. You know how the news is.
So what does this mean? That if they all could be available for Sunday's game if they test negative in the coming days. Okay.
So we're going to have to see as it comes to wide receiver. I don't know how much it's really going to make all that much of a difference anyway. I mean, Dez Bryant is listed on projection systems, and he retired over Twitter a couple weeks ago.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he retired as he found out he had COVID 5 minutes before the game, and then of course all the receivers now are in danger. You know what I mean? Whatever.
And he was negative.
Who, Dez?
Yeah, it was a false positive.
It was not a false positive.
Well, he tested negative after that.
I know, but
something was false.
The false positive rate is like below 1%, and the false negative rate is like with certain tests like as high as 30%. So it's like hard to. That's why they make him test so many times. But I don't know. It happened with people in my family too. So, but I don't know. I mean, yeah, wait to see about those. I do, no matter what. I like Lamar. Still a must win. He's going to be popular. If I'm paying up for a quarterback, he certainly seems like a good one. And I really like Mark Andrews if any of those receivers at all are out, and kind of if they aren't even. The one thing to worry about is that they can just keep the ball on the ground and pound this team, but they also, I see J.K. Dobbins is getting a little bit of love. I can't do it, man. Like, they have too many running backs that it could be. Like, I mean, we saw the big game from Gus Edwards on Monday, with 2 touchdowns. Mark Ingram's always going to start the game and get himself usually a few carries, although he didn't last week. He sort of phased out a little bit. So maybe you could argue that it's just Dobbins and Edwards, and Dobbins makes some sense. It's a great matchup. I just feel like I've been trying to stay away from these Baltimore guys, even on 2-game slates. So why am I going to play them all of a sudden on a full slate? And I do think on the other side, you might want some pieces in it. I do think James Robinson is firmly in play, even against a good run defense, just on volume alone. I prefer him over those other guys we talked about, David Montgomery, Jonathan Taylor. Well, his median may not seem to be the same as the other guys based on the last few weeks. I will just point out that he's actually been the most consistent one of these guys all season long, and mostly in bad game scripts. Also has a ton of upside just because of the usage. I'm not going to go crazy with him, but I just think that he's a better play than those guys are, partially due to ownership. And then I'll have some interest in DJ Shark at 5K. I know we think of Baltimore as this big defense that's great against the run and all this, but after seeing I know it's a great run offense that they have in Cleveland, but after seeing that game, I just sort of have this feeling like, why am I giving this defense more credit than I should in every which way, and in terms of covering receivers as well. So I kind of like DJ Shark a little bit as well. So Shark and Robinson are guys who I'll probably dean in around 10%. Other than that, I have Lamar and Andrews who I'll be well above the field on, but I don't really know what to do until I find out about the receivers.
Yeah, I currently have 0 of Baltimore. I just, for whatever reason, never play them in big main slate fields. And the reason why is because I always end up, running out, not running out, but like just not knowing what to do if I play Lamar.
Right.
I know people do it and get away with it. I just can't wrap my arms around in a 500,000 person tournament playing a quarterback by himself. I just feel as though there's so much correlation to be had with receivers, and I just never can make it work. You could play him with Mark Andrews, but I just never quite do it. That's the best I can describe it.
I understand.
And as far as the running backs go, like you said, it's too much. There's just too much. Too many options on the slate. I don't need to play Dobbins and then get mad when Lamar runs it in. You know what I mean? So I just don't need it. I do think Jacksonville is going to be competitive in this game. And I think that James Robinson is just every single week where they say it's a bad game script, he still gets like zillions of carries. The only one he didn't was last week. So that's last week, whatever. So I do think that he's always in play, and he's one of those 7K guys I look at. And yeah, like you said, Baltimore, they don't have Ray Lewis anymore. They don't have Ed Reed anymore. They're just not quite as good as they used to be. So they were supposed to be a 100-point underdog to Minnesota, and they kept it close. And James Robinson 22 points. The Cleveland game, same thing. Even Pittsburgh, right, where they got smoked, they weren't even in the game. They still handed him the ball 17 times. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think that he is definitely in play. He's probably not my favorite. It's just too much. It's so much easier on the brain to play Jonathan Taylor, for example, like as the favorite against Houston at the same price than it is to screw with that matchup and that possible game script situation. But yeah, I think he's certainly in play. And I'm just going to probably end up with 0 Baltimore, whatever it is.
I hear you. I'm not as excited about it as I actually would be more excited about it. Actually, I'll be more excited about it if all the receivers are out, because I do think it opens things up for Andrews to maybe get some more targets, and maybe it does make it easier to play Lamar with somebody. I do think Lamar is going to have a big game no matter what, pretty much. So it would be nice to find a way to play him, and playing him naked, like you said, in a big field tournament doesn't seem right. And this year hasn't been right, except for last week. I guess it would have been because he had the highest scoring quarterback last week, although it was a Monday night game. All right, you ready to move on?
Okay, who the heck is Lynn Bowden? That's my first question.
Yeah.
Second question is second comment is Deandre Washington. Third comment is Mike Gesicki revenge.
I don't think Gesicki's not going to play.
Oh, you don't think Gesicki's going to play?
No, they're all hurt. They lost. So just to give everybody a quick recap, Miami lost 5 receivers, including 2 tight ends last Sunday against the Chiefs when they made their comeback. So all of the numbers for all the receivers from last week for their team, everything that happened is completely out of whack.
So Mike Gesicki says he was upgraded.
Maybe he was. I have him as not. I have not on the list.
He is listed as upgrade as a positive indicator. Remains to be seen if he'll be cleared to play. Okay, whatever it is. So again, sorry for that pause there. So like Bobby was saying, you got to look at the injury report. So like I'm presuming for openers that both Grant and Park are out. You know what I mean? Just for now. They're all questionable, like you said. So you got to watch this. But if Grant and Parker are both out, then this Lynn Bowden dude, who had the 9 targets yesterday at 3,600 becomes an incredible play and incredibly popular. I would have to imagine, right? And then you have Deandre Washington, who last week he didn't get the love that I thought he was going to. I thought I was going to end up having to make a decision over a really chalky guy. He didn't end up being that chalky, and it was a tough spot, play Kansas City. You know what I mean? To have to keep up with that offense. I don't know if DeAndre Washington's the dude that's gonna make that work, but he's still the lead back. If presuming
I have Ahmed as being back this week.
Let's see. So I have Ahmed right now is, again, he's limited. You know what I mean? Limited participant. So you got to watch these things, I guess. If Ahmed, and then remember, it's only Thursday. If Ahmed is out, Washington again is a decision you have to make. If Ahmed is in, then I probably wouldn't play anybody from the Miami running backs. And as far as wide receivers go, if Parker and Grant, for example, are both in, I don't think I play anybody for the wide receivers. But if they're out, I'll probably play this guy, whoever he is, Lindbone. Gesicki, if he's in, I might play him if the right receiver. This is like a very premature day to talk about this Miami game, I guess. The other thing is the only other comment I have on this game, I guess, is I really have no interest in New England. I mean, literally at all. So for me, it's maybe Miami defense. That's not a bad play. So Miami defense, and then just watch the injury report. Actually, Miami defense 3,700. Holy crap! And I'm not doing that. But so watch the injury report on this game.
Yeah, it's really a hard game to figure out without knowing what's going to happen. It was nice to get, to see the nice game out of Tua last week, even in the comeback thing. Even as they were losing players left and right, he still played well. It's really hard to play anybody because they just can't throw the ball in New England. So, I just don't really have a ton of interest in this game. If Gesicki plays, I have a little bit of interest in him. If Parker plays, I have a little bit of interest in him. If not, I'll play a little bit of Lynn Bowden, but I don't know if I'm going to go nuts with it. I don't think that's going to be the game script. I actually do like Ahmed if he plays. I would put him as you could argue that him against Fournette, but I actually kind of like the idea of playing those two guys together and then doing what else, you want elsewhere that saves you so much money running back.
You want to move on?
Yeah, let's do it. San Francisco, Dallas. You want me to start it?
Sure.
All right. So, look, I'm the Michael Gallup guy. I always want to play Michael Gallup. He is incredibly cheap. He rates well. They're looking for him in the end zone. The last game he got kind of scripted out of because of the not the exact blowout, but they were in control. Also missed they missed him on a couple big plays. I don't love the matchup. San Francisco is really good against. I want to be ahead of the field on Gallup because he's cheap, but he's starting to get a little bit too much ownership. So I think the easy pivot in this game, because I would like a little bit of some exposure to this Dallas offense because they're so cheap outside of Cooper. I think that CeeDee Lamb at 4.5 is really interesting. Even again, and not desperate to try and take advantage of San Francisco in general, but they do throw the ball enough here, and targets alone can make up for it, not to mention the home run hitting upside of Lamb or Gallup, who are both good end zone targets. So I like both. And then Brandon Ayuk is the obvious play for San Francisco. I like Kendrick Bourne as a potential cheap, spend down receiver. He had 7 targets last week. We have no Deebo Samuel. So I think Kendrick Bourne could end up being one of the bigger recipients. And I just this Dallas defense is just garbage to me. So I want to try and take some shots on these guys against them. And in that same vein, because we've seen them just so bad at certain times, I might even take a couple shots with Richie James, but it would have to be maybe more on it feels a little too thin maybe to go that far, but I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. I do like Kendrick Bourne, though. He will be a guy I will have some exposure to. And the running back situation, I don't exactly understand what's happening with Mostert. I don't know why basically nobody's interested in him at all this week. And
well, they don't think he's playing.
I mean, okay, well, assuming he does play, in fact, if he does, which we don't know, I have him as in. But I mean, in as questionable. So his projections are all sort of screwed up. I guess that makes some sense. So we have to know for sure. And if he doesn't play, Jeff Wilson obviously becomes a very strong option at 5.1. And on the other side, Zeke at 6.1 is still cheap enough to where you can definitely play him at low ownership.
All right. So here are my thoughts on this. First of all, I couldn't agree with you more on the Dallas side of things. I think that CeeDee Lamb is an incredibly strong play, just for the price. I'm not going to stack Dallas or anything like that, but I do think that CeeDee Lamb on his own is a really, really good play. So on the San Francisco side, I guess just to reiterate, I think that Ayuk is a very, very strong play. I'm playing him. Makes perfect sense. So here's a stat, which again, it's not even a stat. It's like kind of a stat commentary. Now, again, I didn't really double check this, but I don't know why someone would say this if it weren't true. And this is one of the reasons why I played Giovanni Bernard last week. Didn't really work out, to say the least. But so keep something in mind. Dallas has been in existence since 1960, or whatever the hell they've been in existence. And keep something in mind that between 1960 and now, it used to be an incredibly run-heavy league, right? And in the last 10 to 20 years, it's now become real pass-heavy. And the running backs are, just not expected to run for as many yards as they used to. Dallas has given up this year the first and second most rushing yards in a game in their entire franchise history. Now you think about that. I mean, like in a league where nobody runs the ball, and how long Dallas has been around as a franchise, number 1 and 2 in pure rushing yards given up was this year. And, you know, like you said, if somehow Mostert is healthy enough to play and actually play and get a good workload, I mean, he's going to shred the freaking team. You know, they don't want to look. San Francisco is still trying to get into the playoffs, right? You know, barely, I guess, but they're playing, and they're not going to put it on freaking Mullins to just throw it. I mean, look, they'll get Ayuk the ball, they'll get him jet sweeps or whatever. But when they see the Dallas statistics, they are going to want to cram it down their throats if, in fact, they can get away with it. And there is nobody on this, you know, in the league almost, except for Derrick Henry, who's better at literally running it down people's throats if he can than Mostert. Okay, and so if in fact he's healthy somehow, yeah, Jeff Wilson. If Mostert is out, it's kind of hard to contradict myself, but I think Wilson might become bad chalk.
Yeah.
if you know what I mean, like that's going to be such a freaking obvious play. If Mostert's out, that I don't know if I could do it. You know. But for all the reasons I just mentioned, I mean, he's such a strong player, but Wilson doesn't catch anything, you know? So I've seen Mostert catch some balls out of the backfield also. So I really do hope Mostert plays so I can play him. But I would love to know that he's healthy doing it. You know what I mean? And I'd like to think that Mostert's looking at this matchup and it's like, I got to get myself healthy, man. This is the freaking Cowboys. Right? I can certainly get my shit going here. So I love Ayuk, as I mentioned. Even though the game script is not the greatest but Dallas, you know, they can't stop the pass either, really. So I like Ayuk a lot. I like and I like Mostert. I'm going to really have to figure out what to do if Mostert's out though. And I think I'm off of Elliott. I think I'm done with him. That's my.
I can understand it. I mean, it certainly makes some sense. It's just he's cheap enough to where I'll take a shot on just even the touchdown equity or whatever. Yeah. All right, moving on. Jets at the Rams.
Yeah, this was my first thing, and I thought I was going to get some pushback from you on this one because you haven't been as much on Akers as the field has been.
Only 1 week. Only 1 week.
Okay.
I was on him all the early part of the season, and as a Rams fan, saying why aren't they playing this kid? So right. I absolutely was on the other side of this.
Okay.
But anyway, keep going.
So anyway, they're a 100-point favorite at home. And you know, he's getting 100 rushes a game. It's just, I mean, it's just a perfect play. You know what I mean? Like, and like it or not, I know, you know, they can do different things. Given the choice, I know that McVay would rather run the ball. I just do. I really think that. I think that he can get away with taking it out of Goff's hands. I think he'd rather do that. As probably everybody would if you think about it, but yeah, I mean, just I think that if they can get it going, they'll keep it going. Now, here's where statistics get kind of weird, you know, like the Jets apparently statistically have a good run.
Good against the run, yeah.
Right. However, is that only because other teams don't ever have to run the ball?
No, it's the opposite. It's the exact opposite. It's because all the other teams have to run the ball because they're up by so much. So it doesn't matter because that fits exactly into this game flow. You're going to have the entire defensive line completely stacked against you. And while McVay might prefer to run the ball, he has no problem turning the passing game into his running game and running little out routes for Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp in little 5-yard routes if that's what the defense is asking him to do.
Okay. So for me, I mean, like, yeah, Akers is a really, really strong player, and I'm probably gonna play him if you want to know the truth.
For your 2+2, I think he makes some sense.
Yeah, and so like I said, for either Henry and a cheapie or something like a Taylor and an Akers was my original idea before this Fournette thing opened up. So I have to really kind of figure out what I'm going to do with that. I could probably play Henry anyway if I felt like it. So that's the Rams side, and yeah, you know what? The Jets can't stop a soul in the passing game. So you might even consider this kind of a nice I don't say get right spot. I think of like my AAU basketball teams, right? Like whenever we were playing a team where we were going to win by 20 no matter what we did, I always took that opportunity to run my shit. You know what I mean? To get people, get guys to run their patterns and see, almost like a practice, to see what I can get away with in those types of games, knowing that I could just eventually win the game, whatever. So in a way, I maybe it's a game where they work on their passing game a little bit, you know, and get sharp as far as that goes. I don't see that ceiling type environment unless the Jets put up some kind of resistance. So I'm sure that they're all going to project well, right? Kupp and Woods against an atrocious Jets defense, as will Kupp, but and I know game script, you're not supposed to get too much into predicting blowouts and stuff. I just on an 11 game slate or whatever, I don't know if that ceiling exists. The difficult part for me is going to be what to do on the other side of this game, because look, we got the same crap, right? You got Crowder limited. What do you got? You got Perryman limited, and then you got Mims back at 3,500. You know, so what do you do? I mean, like, you know, last week everybody tried to do the same thing. They're like, Seattle's a 17-point favorite or whatever they were, and they're going to be ahead. The Jets are going to have to throw from behind, and nobody got there from the Jets. Right. Nobody got there anyway. You know, there's a reason why they stink. You know, and you think the Rams? You think Aaron Donald, I'm pretty sure Aaron Donald has either no sacks this year or what he does, he just does everything else except put stats up there. I mean, you think the Rams defense is like, oh, you know what? We have a good game script, so we're going to let the Jets march down the field. No, they're going to kill these people. You know, so I'm not exactly convinced that I want to play the Jets either. So I'm a little confused about what to do here.
Yeah, I want to have some exposure to Mims. It'd be my preference on the Jet side. He's the guy they like. I think that they're going to have to, just on targets alone, he's going to have a chance to catch up. I think Perriman will be more popular, but oddly enough, Perriman will somehow probably end up with Ramsey on him more than Mims will. Mm-hmm. So, and Crowder will line up in the slot a little bit more often. So I don't know how healthy Crowder is. My plan would be to be ahead of overweight on the Jets receivers, but especially Mims. And look, it doesn't mean that they have to score many points. They don't even need to score a touchdown. They can, you know, at 3.5K, if a guy gets me 7 for 80, it's manageable. You know what I mean? And maybe that 80 turns into 100, and maybe that 80 gets a touchdown, or maybe it turns into a 7 with 100 and touchdown. That's all doable, even in garbage time, even against a good defense like the Rams. Obviously, the best play in this game to me is the Rams defense, but they're expensive and they're going to be pretty popular. Outside of that, well, I keep saying this on the showdown slates because that's pretty much what we've had with Rams lately has been showdown slates. Josh Reynolds might get worked back in a little bit in this matchup. The thing that weirds me out a little bit is why are people all of a sudden going to play him when he's sort of become their fourth string receiver? And actually Van Jefferson has been getting more targets than he has, except for last week where Jefferson didn't have any and he had 2. But the game script hasn't really forced him to throw the ball that much. But then again, neither will this one, most likely. I agree with everything you said about Kupp and Woods, and maybe that you're somewhat capped ceiling wise, so I'll be a little bit below them. But I do think that, you know, there's still a chance that one of them has a game here, like a good chance. I'm probably just going to be below the weight on the Rams receivers, above the weight on the Jets receivers, and I'll be below the field on Cam Akers. I love Cam Akers as a player. I actually believe the Jets have a decent run defense. I think the Jets are going to play with a little bit of pride. I don't think it'll matter much because the Rams are really good. But I mean, okay, so this guy put up 20 fantasy points last week and had 1 million carries and all those things. It's not like you wouldn't even have needed him last week with 29 carries and 170 yards. He didn't get in the end zone, so he might, maybe he's due for some touchdown upside or whatever. But in general, like, if he's going to be as chalky as we have him, I'm going to try and find ways to be a little below the field. But as of right now, because the play is strong enough and they really showed they were going to give him the ball in games that matter, it makes me feel like I'm sort of in between. So I'm sort of having him near the field right now on him. But I probably want to try and find ways to come down from that.
Okay. All yeah. Right. Who do you think scores more, the highest scoring Jets fantasy player or the Rams defense?
The Rams defense.
Yeah, probably, right.
I think there'll be a lot of sacks too. And
yep.
But you never know, if they, I mean, look, I actually think that with the spread being such a huge margin and there being no fans, I actually think if I was betting on that game, which I'm not going to, but I would probably bet on the Jets to cover. I think the Jets are going to play hard. You know what I mean? They have nothing to lose by winning anymore because, you know.
Here's the only, and I think about that. The only issue with that, not the only issue, plenty of issues with that, but
They suck. That's the part.
I saw this with Seattle. So Seattle played the Giants and the Jets this season, and they played the Giants and they took them lightly and they lost. And then they're like, well, we're not going to do this again, and they just destroyed the Jets. The Rams played the Giants at home earlier this season, and it was like a 1-point game in the fourth quarter. They're not going to do that again. You know, they're gonna stick it to the Jets. I think.
You never know though. Every now and then, Goff will just be airball his first 2 throws, and all of a sudden the Jets defense has got a touchdown, and then they run another one in or something. Like, you know, I'm just saying, weirder things have happened, but I agree with you for the most part. Like the Rams are really good. Everybody wants to know what team can beat KC. In my opinion, the Rams, and that's not just as a homer thing. I think they have the best chance to beat them in a must-win game of any team in football. Because of their defense, because of the best passing defense, and it won't matter. The Chiefs will still get their stuff done, but the Rams also have enough weapons on offense and a good enough coach to where I think that they actually are the biggest threat. Moving on to the next one, where I do have some interesting, I don't know if they're interesting. They're takes that I like, but we're going to see, why I'm fading all these other chalky running backs. One of the guys I really love is in this next game. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the Miles Sanders thing again. And I'm going to say that I hope that Jalen Hurts unlocks Miles Sanders, and that's what happened. He had 2 touchdowns, put up 30 fantasy points, had his biggest game of the season for a guy who most of the year led the league in yards per carry, but they couldn't yet somehow they never ran the ball because Philly was down all the time. Well, maybe if that situation changes a little bit, and because they're going to run the ball with Hurst and him, I could see it saying people thinking it might hurt Sanders, but I think Sanders has tremendous upside. It's funny to think about, in a great match, a perfect situation, all the stuff last week, Cam Akers put up 21 fantasy points. Miles Sanders put up 30 fantasy points. Not to say that these are totally equal situations, but if you just think about the fact that Sanders will be probably a third as owned as Cam Akers will be, and the fact that he's also a big part of this team, one of the better running backs in football, I feel like it's interesting. So I want to be ahead of the field on guys like Sanders, who I think have real, game-breaking type of upside. That's most of my feelings about this game in general. That and that DeAndre Hopkins is a terrific play at 7,900. But I honestly, that's pretty much all I've really got in this game.
Yeah. So,
I mentioned. Sorry,
what's that?
I forgot to mention Goddard.
Yeah, I mentioned several times that the choices were between Henry and a cheapie or whatever, these 7K guys, and I neglected to include Miles Sanders as one of those 7K guys, between him and Taylor and Akers. I consider them all pretty much similar range. And the other thing to remember about Sanders is that he was hurt for a while, and even when he came back a little bit, he was playing a little bit hurt. And some running backs don't play well hurt. They just don't. And he's been healthier, and now he's probably first week without a full Q tag the whole season. I totally agree. I think it's a decent play. What I was going to say, I was going to do a whole lot of drama. I was going to say, I really like this game because it's a really, really good, running quarterback in this game that I kind of want. And it honestly is not Jalen Hurts. Listen, I know Philadelphia is supposedly good against the run or whatever this stuff, but I am all too willing to do something like this, to go, like you said, to do Kyler and to do DeAndre Hopkins. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like Philly, all of a sudden one game and they're like kind of like passable again. I'm just kind of not interested. Arizona's back at home. They played at Giant Stadium, Giant Stadium, whatever it's called now, MetLife Stadium, whatever, which is kind of a train wreck to play in. And yeah, he's had a shoulder, Kyler Murray, I guess, but I don't know. I just have this feeling that, that he's going to have a good game. And I think that Hopkins is also going to have a good game. And this is, like you said, you're going to get both these guys at low ownership, I think. So I'm pretty interested in this. And I'm also, believe it or not, pretty interested, even if I don't get the Hopkins. That was one of my initial builds is Kyler Murray as my quarterback by himself in 2+2, in the 2+2 thing.
Yeah, well, the 2+2, that's not the worst idea in the world. The one thing I would be scared about doing it in that kind of a format, because this is going to be a game where the running could really slow the game down.
I don't know if Arizona game could ever get slowed down, though.
It's the Philly side of it, though. If they're getting first downs with running the ball between Sanders and Hurst, that's the only thing I worry about. And then even Kyler, who runs, but generally runs for bigger plays. But I mean, if you look at even the number of attempts, I mean, 13, although he had 5 in the previous games, but 11, 11, 14, 10. That's just all slows the game down a little bit more. But then again, if he's running that much, usually something good's happening for you. So I see the argument. I definitely see it.
I don't know. I kind of like the Arizona defense too.
Absolutely. No, sure. Why not? I mean, I think that actually is a pretty good call. I think that's going to be a pretty good defense to use. I don't know that they would be my main cash game defense, but they definitely would be in consideration for it because they are right in that right price, that sweet spot price wise. And Hurts is still, as much as I hate Carson or thinks Carson Wentz has been terrible, I don't think Jalen Hurts is like going to be a great quarterback in this league. I never have thought that. I just think you have to go with him. I'm not going to play any Hurts this week as of right now. Maybe I'll change my mind later, but I doubt it. I really think mostly it's going to be just the guys I mentioned. So that's it for this game, right? Are we ready to move on to the next one?
Yeah. So a very wise man whose name rhymes with Bobby Firestone told me like earlier this week when we were talking about our lineups from last week. They're like, Sheets, let me ask you something. How come we go through all this stuff and we go through all these gyrations, all these projections and all this talk, and why don't we just play the freaking Chiefs every week? And there's, aside from price, which is certainly a big deal, I can't really argue with you, right? So what if I mean, first of all, this line, to me, they're a 3-point favorite, presuming no Breeze. Is that somehow accurate?
No, they're a 3-point underdog.
That's what I'm not. No, KC's only a 3-point favorite.
Oh, yeah. I mean, on the road against the best defense in football.
I guess.
But I hear you, man.
I guess. I don't know, man. That's rough business. So I'm curious to hear if you're going to go back to the well on Kamara again. I'm curious to hear if you're going to go to Thomas and just try to get a shootout out of this game somehow. I don't know. This is a salary cap game, so I'm not paying $37,000 for Kelsey. I don't know if I can pay $31,000 for Tyreek Hill. I don't know if I can do it. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm going to end up probably freaking stupid fading this game. I'll be sitting here rooting for crap like, I don't know. And I would say crap like DeAndre Hopkins, but I guess I'll have better options. I'll have some good options too. Imagine you like sitting there, okay, please Mims get there. And meanwhile, you see Mahomes like going like this, like all at 4 o'clock, just like getting 35 points up on the board, something like that. So I don't know. What do you think of this game?
I think that we have, I'm gonna be overweight on the Chiefs anytime that they're gonna be lower owned. This is a spot like maybe the first time at a reasonable price where I would have considered playing Taysom Hill. I also kind of like the Chiefs defense.
Okay.
And I don't think Taysom Hill is very good, but if they're going to stay in this game, they're going to probably need something from him. And they've got enough weapons around him where I think he can be effective, but definitely fine with Mahomes to either of the big guys, even both. They're really expensive. I would prefer just taking one of them and hoping that the other guy doesn't end up having the big game, but maybe rotate him around. And if I had to pick between the two of them, Kelsey's the easier one because he's going to win his position, even if he doesn't have a big game for the most part. I also like the idea, like we don't usually get games that are projected this close with KC, and we know, I mean, it's, you just want to be overweight on this. What I don't want to be is I don't want to play Edwards-Helaire, which I hear people talking about this week. No interest for me. I love Kamara. I think this is a spot where they may have to air it out a bunch, which is going to really, really increase. I mean, we see the one game that they were down big since Taysom Hill's taken over, all of a sudden back to those 10 targets again, 7 receptions. You know what I mean? It's really just against Atlanta, the 2 previous times in Denver, they didn't have any reason to try and throw the ball. So it sort of killed Kamara's, PPR upside. We get that back in this game, in my opinion. So I think Kamara is the strongest play at 74, like in that lower other tier range, because he can put up a higher score. Like Henry and Cooks can smash, and Kamara can outduel them. That's how big of a game he could have. So I like Kamara a ton. I like Michael Thomas, not necessarily and Kamara in the same lineups because I don't think you're going to get a ton of yards passing from Taysom Hill. But I'm open to Taysom Hill this week, which I not usually. Michael Thomas, Tyreek Hill. I want to be overweight on everyone in this game, man. I'm not going to avoid it. I'm going to play a little bit of Sammy Watkins and Emmanuel Sanders as well. Emmanuel Sanders is kind of my sneaky play, like really sneaky. And I'm probably only talking about 10 or 15%, but it's 4.2K in a game where he's the number 2 receiver and they're going to have to be throwing the ball. He's just, had a decent game last week, had a touchdown. I could see him being effective because I feel like the game script will be similar to how they were down early to Philly, and you're going to see more of these targets go around. I don't know how many points they're going to score, but I think the PPR upside is much higher. And KC's defense honestly has basically given up to whatever they wanted to, the other teams wanted. I mean, we saw Tua with no receivers last week have the highest scoring game of any quarterback during the Sunday slate. So I'm interested in these pieces. Thomas, 15%ish. Kamara, I'll probably have 30%. Travis Kelce, I'll probably have 20%. I'll probably have 15% of Tyreek Hill. That's going to be a lot of where I spend my money this week.
So a little commentary, by the way. I mentioned going into last week, KC had kind of a rough game against Denver on Sunday Night Football, I think it was, 2 weeks ago, where they basically sleptwalked through the game. Mahomes pretty much did nothing, and they just, they had the ball last, so that means that they're going to win, right? So they ended up winning, and I commented going into last week against Miami. I said, on the one hand, I feel as though, I feel bad for Miami because they're going to really turn on the Jets, and yet on the other hand, maybe Miami has a good defense, and I'll tell you, after the first couple of drives, it was pretty fishy, right? And Mahomes had like 2 interceptions. I don't know if it was a pick 6 or something, but they eventually got there. They've been a little, it's sick to say, right? For all the points they put up, but they've been a little unsharp.
I think in New Orleans here.
No, I'm talking. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about what to do with the KC offense.
Yeah.
I don't, against a pretty good, against a really good New Orleans defense, I don't think I'm going to end up paying for the KC. Oh, I definitely like New Orleans against the spread. And that's clear. That's 100%. But
really? Okay.
Oh yeah. Well, as I said, how could they possibly only be a 3-point underdog?
You like New? Oh, I got you.
That's like classic Sheets.
I know. I totally missed it too, which feels really silly of me.
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to win like 21-10 or something like that. And we're like, whoa, what happened? So I'm probably going to be. You know what? I'll get into. I'll get into the New Orleans side. I'll get into Thomas. I'll get into. And you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe this is just kind of an expert Alvin Kamara week. And yeah, is that another 7K guy? By the way, is he 7K?
Yeah.
Yeah. So all right, we'll have some fun. So between Kamara, Taylor, Sanders, Akers, they're all within like 800 of each other, right? How do we rank these?
Listen to those names you just mentioned. I'll start with the best one. I'll take Kamara.
I guess so, huh?
I mean, and the fact that he's going to be like a third as owned as these other guys, I understand. Huh? And it's not a bad matchup for him. It's actually an excellent matchup. So
I agree. I agree with you, man.
I started into this Kamara smashes this week and gets me there with 30 plus fantasy points.
That I like it, man.
Yeah, and I think we can get way over the field on him without doing too much. I think I'm gonna have him 30+%. I really do. All right, let's talk real quick. Just highlighting some position. Okay, Sheets, is there one game after all this that you feel like is the one you want to have the most of, or is there maybe some players that you feel that way you want to go with, or?
No, I'm gonna be with you, man. I'm gonna lose 1,500 this week. I think I might do it also. I think I might plow it in there. We'll see, but I think I'm going to try it because I do want to screw around a little bit. I think I want to play a little of those Redskins just for fun. I want to play a little of that Indianapolis side of things without Taylor, right? Kind of for fun. I want to play some Arizona. By the way, were you tilted at all? But when Jeffrey got a touchdown?
Which oh, you know what? I was a little bit not like crazy, but
it turns out it was like his only target, I think.
It was a little frustrating. I tell you what I was really tilted by. I hadn't looked at the State Kings Discord, and I guess Deandre Swift was tackled at the 1 yard line twice in the last seconds of the game, and they're like, you would have won everything in the afternoon slate. I would have won the 50K for the Wildcat and the 100K for the other one.
What?
And I did not realize that until 2 days ago. So that was heartbreaking a little bit. That was the one that I really felt tilted on. But you know what? Nothing you could do about it, obviously. It just
You know what? But to answer your question, I think that this week is not going to be a week won by a big game stack. You know, I think it's going to be, as they say in my business, kind of a stock pickers market. You know, it's going to be the people that pick the best plays. Now, again, you want correlation or whatever, but I don't think it's going to be some wild 45-42 game where you're going to need 5 guys from the game to make it work. I think you could pick and choose good plays. Like, for example, I have no problem with a one-off of guys, like I said, like Pittman, just for example, just to kind of throw into the mix, or I don't know.
No, that's a good. I mean, I'm sort of with you on that this week. I don't have the one that could get to be that way would be to me be the Houston Indy game.
Yes.
But you can even stack that game without using the quarterbacks, although you could just do it with Watson also. That works. Because I'm looking at my most owned quarterbacks this week. And one guy who's going to be in there who I didn't mention before, just because of the Jets thing, just because of how they have been, I do think we have to play. I'm going to take some shots with Jared Goff just because, and playing both those receivers even.
Yeah.
The Jets have just been on the wrong side. I mean, 5 times now the millionaire basically stacks against them and win. It's too many times. And team, like I said, teams try to run the ball against them. They stack everybody. They play everybody one-on-one coverage on the outside. And if you're going to try and do that to the Rams, they again, like you said, they want to run the ball. But McVay is smart. He'll just turn the running game into that short little passing game, and Woods and Kups will have 11 catches each or something like that.
Since we're not going to be doing anything for the rest of the week. Remember, it's only it's still Thursday, but there's one guy that we didn't mention that, again, I think people are going to play back that Houston game. Mm-hmm. Did you have any thoughts on this Chad Hansen at 4,200?
Oh yeah, I'm okay. I actually ended up playing him some last week. Don't have much interest because of what's his name?
Cooks being back.
Cook's coming back. Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, even in that game, 36-7, you think that he would get. I mean, he had 7 catches, but you're hoping for a little more production, and you're throwing the ball 45 times or whatever they did.
Yeah. So I'll figure out the 2+2 thing, and again, watch the injury news, especially in. I forget them all already. Like the San Francisco game, who's playing running back, the Miami game, who's playing receiver, and that kind of thing.
And of course the unknown COVID news that we're inevitably going to get.
This Fournette thing. It just reeks of chalk busting. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
I hear you. It's weird because I was almost going to play. I talked about him last week when we thought he was going to be healthy, and he scratched him. And I talked about playing him instead of Jones last week. And now it'd be weird to fade him as the only running back for Tampa Bay, but I might do it too. Although I think in reality, I'm going to end up above the field on Fournette unless things change. I'm going to play Fournette and Kamara all over the place, so I'm not too worried about getting.
Yeah, so I guess that's the deal. I guess so. I'm telling you, I already pre-entered. Just so I was budgeting, I pre-entered my Thursday showdown slates, my Saturday slates, my MMA slates.
I love it.
And I'm telling you, see this 2,068? It's going to be 1,500 in the Millie Maker, 3 of the 150, 3 of the three max 150s, and that's going to be.
That's it.
I'm going to be all in for that. Now, again, I'll probably hopefully cash in somewhere along the line between now and then. But that's what I'm playing this week.
Sounds good, man. Well, it'll be fun. I'm excited for another fun weekend. And look, this is the last time we'll come back. We'll come to you guys before we're going to be talking basketball. I know Monday we'll have a Monday showdown, but I'm so pumped for basketball. So ready to get that going. Anyway, everybody, for Sheets, I'm Bobby saying thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you at the top of the leaderboards this weekend.
All right. So